Hello everyone, and welcome to the last video in this series about Microsoft Syntex in action. For those of you that have not seen this series before, first of all, I'm here with my good friend Goken.
Hello everyone.
A little bit of introduction, just in case somebody missed the first two series. Yeah. Goken, MVP, Regional Director, yes. MCT Regional Lead, and one of the first people to start working with Microsoft Syntex to make the most out of it.
Indeed. So, huge welcome everyone from the sunny Ottawa, right? We're
yes.
in the Ottawa offices. And as Vlad mentioned, happy to be here with all those fancy titles to explain you about the upcoming features with Syntex.
So this is the third video in a series. The first video was all about the SharePoint Advanced Management License. The second webinar we did live, which is available in YouTube on the same playlist that you will see this video in, that one's about enhancing the value of your content. So how do you take unstructured documents, untagged documents, get the metadata out of them to make searchability better, classification better, and in the very near future, make your AI better, because having those documents tagged will make Copilot understand them so much better. In this video, we're talking about the future.
Indeed.
And when we talk about the future between us as MVPs, we talk about stuff that Microsoft announced, but it's not yet delivered. So things that are going to come soon. Some of them by the end of the year, some of them maybe next year. We don't have the dates on all of those yet. So, Goken, what's the first one that we will talk about?
The first one, if I had one question to ask you or to any SharePoint admin from back in SharePoint 2003, 7, even before when we started with SharePoint, was I like to have a backup tool.
Absolutely.
That was one of the most asked, demanded feature, and that's coming with Syntex. Soon, with Microsoft Syntex, you'll have Microsoft 365 Backup, right? That will help you in any case if there is a ransomware encryption attack or a cybersecurity breach or even an unforeseen data loss. Well, you as a company, you can't afford to wait for weeks, months to get your data back. We had the issue with MGM, right? So
that's something that happened very recently. All of their data got encrypted, and it lasted over a week. It's something that happens to all organizations out there. A lot of the times I feel like people think, oh, it won't happen to me.
This will happen, for sure.
Yeah.
This will happen.
So why not have a backup? And I really wonder how this will affect the many ISVs out there, because we have so many products out there, without naming them, that are currently offering Microsoft 365 backup solutions.
Yeah. Microsoft 365 Backup will, I also had a talk with the Microsoft PG and said like, hey, is this the proper way to go? Because we have a lot of ISVs doing the backups and restores. And I was surprised by the answer. They work together to build that tool, and you will see in a couple of slides why they work together. But first, let's see what you can do with backup.
What can we do with backup?
You can backup SharePoint sites, OneDrive accounts, and exchange mailboxes in your tenant.
Okay.
You can restore them, right, on a high level today. The file level will come soon. I don't have any date to give to you yet. At least even Microsoft didn't give this to us. But you can backup, restore that, and you can even search and filter. So you will have the screens, and I will show that in a couple of seconds, where you can go and search for a backup SharePoint site or an Exchange mailbox, and you can go and filter into that search.
So at the beginning, because this is not even released yet, but when we get it, it will be you back up the whole site collection, or you back up the full OneDrive.
There you go.
You won't be able to say, hey, Goken only deleted one important file. If I have to restore from 1 week ago, it will be everything.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's one of the advantages that ISVs will still have, at least for the foreseeable future. Well, we'll see when those new features come in.
Yes, and this is the screen how it looks like. So whenever you have the M365 backup, well, within the M365 Admin Center, on the left side within the menu, you will see M365 backup. And as I mentioned, you can back up the OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint, and the example provided there is for a mailbox. take the example, you have your license, well, you click on the blue button, which is restore, once the backup has been done, and then you will have to select your content type. I like to restore a SharePoint content, site content. I like to restore an Exchange mailbox or a OneDrive mailbox. Then you select the affected users, right? If it's the whole organization, well, you just select everyone. If it's only Vlad, you just select only Vlad.
Probably only me.
Probably only you.
Probably only me. I messed something up.
And that's the fantastic stuff. Like, you can go within that specific time frame. Like, if the attack occurred like yesterday at 2 p.m., you can definitely go and select for that time frame and ask for the restore. So Microsoft, within their videos, they tell us that the restore can take up to hours. It's always better than weeks and months.
Of course.
Depending the size of the SharePoint site, the OneDrive content, or the mailbox, it can take up to hours to get restored. And then you will see that nice screen where you see the mailbox getting restored.
I saw in a previous screen you had multiple hours on
Yes.
when to do it. Do we know so far? Can we configure it to back up every hour? Will it be on an automatic schedule that it does it every hour? Or will it be every day to start with? Do we know that information yet?
I can't remember seeing that, and I'm just quickly looking here. It's like that big button you see. Here on the top you have the full tenant restore. Well, that is the restore of the whole tenant, basically. And what I know is that the file level backup will come soon, but today it's like one big massive screenshot with that big button. When we will talk about archiving, it's actually way easier to understand and to, but that's it today. And remember what I said to you with the partners, Vlad?
Yes.
So that's the opportunity, because Microsoft will deliver you the M365 backup APIs that even partners can use into their applications that they can consume to go and back up your
So
data.
Microsoft will offer the underlying layer, the tools that they're going to use as a first party, but at the same time, if partners see a way to innovate,
Yes.
they can always innovate and use the same APIs known to work by Microsoft.
Absolutely.
But now you talked about archiving.
That was probably the second most demanded feature ever for SharePoint. And now let's go for archive. If today we do an assessment into your tenant, I'm pretty sure 90% of data, you don't check it anymore, right? It's just...
But it's still important.
It is important. I'm not telling it's not
You
important.
don't look at it every day, but
There we
you
go.
want to keep it for when you need it.
There you go.
Or for regulatory requirements, a bunch of reasons.
Absolutely, especially me from Europe. I know for my customers, we have to keep that data for 10 years. But at the end, you have a storage quota, right, in your tenant. You don't want to pass them, otherwise you have to pay extra for it. And that's the reason why Microsoft comes with a solution, which is called archiving, where you can actually move data from the hot storage to the cold storage, where you can actually move that data and bring them into the archive and then restore it whenever you want.
So how does it look like?
Okay, well, before going to that one,
I'm too excited. I want to show me what it looks like.
one thing I want to mention on that slide is whenever you select an archive, a full SharePoint site, or again the file level site that will come hopefully soon, you will maintain the full admin features, meaning that e-discovery, access policies, sensitive label, DLP, retention policies, and so on, they all will still apply on that data. It is in your tenant, it is your security rules, it is your data, and you still are the master of that data that decides whenever that data goes into the archive or moves from that archive.
And that's very important for most Microsoft enterprise customer to keep their regulatory compliance and everything.
Two things from here is, remember the backup was from the M365 Admin Center?
Yes.
This one is from the SharePoint Admin Center.
Oh, it's only SharePoint. SharePoint is the best. We know that. But this one's only for SharePoint.
You can do mass updating with PowerShell scripts or with the SharePoint Advanced Management capabilities from Lifecycle Management feature. So that's also an option. It has some built-in workflows where you can build some intelligence. And if we have a look, that's how it looks like. Within the SharePoint Admin Center, well, on the top you see manage inactive sites with M365 Archive. When you click on it, well, it will see and show you the active sites you have and the storage you have. Like in this example is I have 600 active sites and 450 used gigabyte. If you click on the archive sites, well, and here is the intelligence. It will create a policy for you. You can define a policy. What is an archive? How should I consider an archive? Is a site archived if I don't touch it for 6 months, 12 months, 3 months? And that's where actually you define that policy. I can say, when should the site be considered inactive? I can say on that example is 3 months. And then I can say, hey, choose a type of site to analyze. I can include, exclude sites. And finally, I can see and define if the site owner doesn't reply to my email, what should I do? Then if you create that policy...
I think, sorry to interrupt, Gökhan, some of this functionality just to find inactive sites just came out because we covered it when we talked about the advanced management license. The functionality to find your inactive sites is out.
It is.
Well, it's the second half of that part. Okay, we know our inactive sites. What do we do with them? And that's the archive part that it's not yet delivered. But today, just wanted to let you all know, if you have the SharePoint Advanced Management license, you can go in and already find out your inactive sites and manually do something with them if you want, or just keep the reports there so you're ready once archive comes in.
Absolutely. And this is how it looks like. Once you have your policy active, you can see that I have a bunch of sites, and then you have that button above which is called archive. Well, you can also do that manually. When you see the archive, so you filter, within SharePoint Admin Center, you can filter on the view, and then you will see all the archived sites. On that example, I have a bunch of sites, they're all archived, meaning that the storage is actually from hot storage becoming cold storage. If you want to restore, very easy. Well, you click on the site, and then you see a reactivate button. That's it. Really, nothing that difficult.
Simple,
create
easy.
A policy, bring that data to the cold storage, and reactivate whenever you want.
And fast, which is very important. You don't want it to take forever.
There we go. That's very, very easy. The third one.
eSignatures.
Oh my goodness, that's probably one of the things that we have been waiting for. eSignatures. We all want to have that kind of, feature where I want to go to my manager and +2 and +3, where I like to let him sign a document. And actually you can, with the Syntex signatures, do that. And you can see on the screen, if you just go one back, this is how it looks like. You can see that within Syntex, you can click on a PDF file and then ask to require a signature. You have the Syntex signatures, but you also have Adobe and other vendors that you can include.
That's very important because we're here in Ottawa, there are so many government entities that they went all in with Adobe. They all went somewhere else. And for them to change the process, a process that they know, a process that is audited, and more importantly, a process that is compliant, to change it to a new solution can be a big investment. But here we can integrate many other e-signature providers, which can make it so much easier for a company to start using Syntex in Microsoft 365, make the process so much easier, but not sacrifice, not make it a huge investment to change to a whole other system.
Absolutely. And whenever you are done with that, you just select the users, you just click on the blue button, you continue, and then you just have to provide where those people have to sign to. And if you just go further, you will have to select, this is the first signature's place, this is the second signature place, and you just provide syntax on how to do that. And whenever you are ready with that, you just save that, and then an email will be sent to the 2 recipients, and they all have to sign from that one into the Syntex PDF file.
So very similar to how every other e-signature works, but now so much easier to configure it from Microsoft 365. You don't quit the context of where you're working, you're more productive, and you're in M365, so you know your data is safe.
Absolutely. Then we have the repository services, and I think here, there we go. I just have to open that one, and we have the repository services. Have you ever heard about repository as a service or?
I have to say, the first time I went to a session about, and they didn't say repository as a service, they only said RaaS.
Yeah, RaaS.
So I see a session about it, I can't talk about where I saw it, because it's under NDA. But I see a session about RaaS. So what's the first thing? I go to Bing, of course.
Yeah.
Definitely not Google. And I search for RaaS. So I see ransomware as a service. And I was like, what? What's Microsoft working on? Ransomware as a service? But no, it's repository as a service. And
Indeed.
this is brand new.
It is.
Many partners are invested in using that. But Goken is still something that's a bit abstract because it's not something we can play with. It's not something we can see or touch, right?
No. So it is basically a SharePoint without the user interface. It is where you, as a partner, an ISV or a developer, well, you can go to a repository from your customer, which is the SharePoint repository, and just go with your applications and read from that data. It is a SharePoint without the SharePoint UI. It's just one call to a repository where you can just read all the data from your customer. The main advantage with that is that it's your data. You can apply any sensitivity label, any data DLP rule on top of it, because it's your data, it's your tenant, and you are still the master of all the knowledgeable stuff around that data. The only thing is it's in a RaaS, in a repository, where people can just go and read the data and build the application around that.
And that's something that many vendors had to find workarounds. Put it in Azure somewhere, put it in SQL somewhere, put it in a whole bunch of other places, but why not have it inside your tenant, the same place where all your data, everything will be so much faster, and also add some flexibility in the way that we store content in there.
And the good thing is it is natively integrated within Purview security and compliance. So within the audit log, as an example, if you like to see what's happening within your RaaS, it's going to be perfectly possible. This is the developer side of the story. Either you or me, we are developers. But as far as I understood, it's still in development, right? Is that the repository services, you have to do a bunch of stuff within Azure first, but the whole idea is that you could, with the RaaS, attack through the Graph API multi-tenant data. That Vlad has a tenant, I have a tenant, and we have, who is a good developer in our community? Let's say Sebastian?
Sebastian, I was going to say Vincent because he's at the conference.
Okay, let's say Vincent, he's building an application for us. Well, he could, with RaaS, go to that endpoint of Vlad and mine and consume from that data and build his application.
If we allow him to.
If we allow him to, that's for sure. So this is the only technical graphs I found it, and my apologies if that's not something what you were expecting, but that's what I understood. You have the Azure side of the story where you have to have your Azure AD app ID, where you have the billing info and a bunch of other settings, and then you have your RaaS, which through the Graph API will go to the containers, which provides all the data from multiple tenants. Well, and you can go up to multiple tenants. That's what I understood. Then, translation services.
That's something, being in Ottawa, capital of Canada, which is English and French, I had a bunch of questions about that in my session. And I'm from Quebec, so English and French everywhere. Brussels is multilingual as well,
yes.
Right? So seeing investments in that makes me happy.
I'm so sorry for the partners we have in Ottawa because they sell also translation services. But with Syntex, it's going to be all possible to translate the whole document. You would be able to say, hey, that kind of document I'd like to translate from English to French. And AI behind Syntex would be able to translate the whole document. So that's all possible.
Of course. Will it be perfect? Maybe,
no.
Maybe not.
Well, even you and me who are native French, we still make errors. So it's going to be good, that's for sure. Like when I see the power of ChatGPT today, I'm pretty sure it's going to be nearly perfect. But still, the model, as you always say, needs to be trained, needs to be understood. And one thing to add within here is that you can also translate documents based on metadata. So if you have a column which is French, well, you could be able to translate that document automatically because some metadata fields are in a specific value.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I understood as well.
Next up.
Summarization.
Summarization.
And that's, I think, just here. Well, Teams Premium. We had a chat today, right? Teams Premium, Copilot, all that summarization story.
I think Microsoft is investing a lot in summarization. And I think that as a society today, we have so much data to consume, whereas maybe the generation before us, Goken, the problem was having the data, right? How do we get the data? How do we have access to the data? But today our problem is we have too much data.
How do we understand the data?
How can we consume as much as possible in the short amount of time we have? And like you said, Teams Premium Meeting Recap does that for us.
Summarization.
Copilot Business Chat can help us with that. And now Syntex will be able to help us with that, but at the document level, if I understand correctly.
Yes. So basically, you will have a PDF file which you will say, hey, analyze that document for me. And then on the right side, it will give you all the important notes of that document. So if in that document on page 17, you have something like, hey, this is the final invoice for you, and that's $17,000, well, it will come on the right side like, hey, this is something important that you should understand and read off. So he will summarize all the important topics for you. So the main question I have, and I haven't tested yet, is how will he understand what important for me is? Because maybe X, Y, Z is important for me, but not A, B, C. But that's something that I think we need to test when it comes out.
I think there's already a model in the AI builder that does entity extraction, things like that. So it's something they've been working on for a while, something that existed on for a while, but I can't wait to see how they get the power of, who knows, GPT-4 model or what model they use in the back to make it relevant to us.
Absolutely, absolutely. OCR.
That's something that
yes.
in the second webinar we did together, we had quite a few questions about OCR, and unfortunately, a lot of the PDF documents that we have, we had them physical, we scanned them, OCR was not performed.
Nope.
So how can we get that information? How do we get the summary? How do we get the content extraction if it's just one image? And this is where OCR comes in, transforms your images into text in the back, searchable text.
Searchable objects. Basically, it's not going to write into your document, it's going to actually write on a layer on that document, and it's going to understand what you have been writing. It has a bunch of advantages and disadvantages, and today, it works only for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, and devices. So if your data is stored somewhere else, that's not going to be possible. And the image file must be less than 50 megabytes. So I know I had a customer asking for AutoCAD files, which is like probably 10 gigabytes, 15 gigabytes per file, immense PDF files. No, it's 50 megabyte maximum. That could change, but that's at least what we have today, right? And what was really good is, what I understood is, with the extracted data, so take the example, you have written a credit card information on a paper. OCR can detect that and can apply DLP.
They can already do it today with Teams messages.
Yes.
So with Teams messages, if I send a picture of a credit card in Teams and I have a DLP policy, it can already do it. But now we can protect more content in our tenant with this.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, because with Teams it's credit cards and
a lot of the whatever you say your DLP policy.
And now, well, it's going to be the same on PDF files on an extra layer. So that's also something that I really look forward, because you have no clue idea on what people have been written today on a whiteboard. You just take a picture, upload this. Maybe it's sensitive, maybe it's not. Now with Syntex OCR, it will be very easy to get that. If you want to use this today, enable pay-as-you-go, and this will become available into your tenant. If you don't have pay-as-you-go, you don't have the option. Once you enable pay-as-you-go, OCR becomes active and you can test it.
And I mean, all of Syntex is moving to pay-as-you-go. Most of Syntex is moving to pay-as-you-go.
The whole plan is to have Syntex under the pay-as-you-go umbrella. But it's not easy, and I do understand. If we look to SAM, if we look to structured models, unstructured models, it's not that easy, but they're working on it. So they're working on it for sure. And then the last one, the biggest one, yes, the project Archimedes. Vlad, have you ever had the situation where there was a demand, an ask, and that no PowerShell script or no tool could help you because it went timeout, or the data crashed, the tool crashed? Have you had any scenario like that before?
That happens too often. Even if we have the tool, we know we can do it with PowerShell. There's just so much data that either it takes forever or it times out in the middle, and there's no real mechanism where you can retry or wait. So yeah, that happens a lot.
A lot, especially if you have a tenant with 100,000 of sites, thousands of users, millions of files. It is quite normal that a tool crashes, timeouts, because it's too big to handle. And Project Archimedes is actually big data analytics for SharePoint and OneDrive. That's the code name. That's going to pretty soon change when they will release it. And the whole idea is that you can replace your traditional third-party tools or PowerShell without getting throttled or without getting errors. Questions like, hey, what are all the external domains that we're sharing with? Or Vlad, with whom does he share and how many times did he share? What
Everybody.
Kind of,
I share with everybody.
like, what kind
Sharing
of
is caring.
Sharing is caring, but like as a manager asks you, today it's like nearly impossible to get that. And okay, for one person maybe, but if we go for 100 users, thousands of users, well, then we can get that kind of issues. And Antonio Maio, which is also speaker now in Ottawa, has a phenomenal blog post around Project Archimedes and all the questions that it could reply to, which you will probably add into the description.
I will add it in the description below so everybody can have a look at it.
And yeah, basically it will help you to reply every unanswered question. And that's how it relies to. And that slide comes actually from Antonio. It's actually showing how Project Archimedes is working. You need to have an Azure subscription, a resource group where you have to configure a bunch of stuff. And whenever you have that, you have some approvers, an approver group, and then you go to your SharePoint and OneDrive, you ask your questions, and you will receive a data set as a response, and that values, well, you can show them into Power BI. So no questions will remain unanswered with Project Archimedes, and it will reply to every question basically you have.
So it's a bit like we have some of that today, right? In Power BI, I have a widget that's Q&A, and I can ask a question about my data. So yes, in a way, the asking question already exists. I mean, Copilot is all about asking it questions, but the big part that was missing in the back was having access to the data, having that data set created and organized. That was the biggest challenge, and this is what will help us with. I'm sure it's something that I can't wait to see the billing method for this. I'm not sure if it's probably going to be pay-as-you-go, as most Syntex things, but I can't wait to see how it will be licensed in the end.
So that comes to an end, but before we go for the outro, you made a very valid point for the licensing. And I think we have to take a moment to talk about licensing before. Today, Syntex is licensed as the following. The models, well, is partly pay-as-you-go, and for some cases, for the structured models as an example, you still need to have the AI Builder credits as well as the Syntex licenses. For Vlad's part, the
Advanced
SharePoint
Management licenses, it's per user per month.
There we go.
$3.
There we go. So Microsoft's plan is to move all of that to pay-as-you-go, and for all the new features, I do assume it's also going to be pay-as-you-go. But yeah, just bear in mind, if something is not working, first check the licensing or the licensing expert, as you mentioned before.
You're the licensing expert, no?
I try to understand how it's working. And a last word is the definition I aim to say is Syntex is more than Syntex only. You just have to know how to license it, right? You just have to know license it. And you have a lot to cover and discover with Syntex. World-class measurement capabilities, OCR, content rule processor, summarization, RaaS, archiving, annotation, backup, eSignature, translation.
So much. I think it's really going to be a suite of services, right? It's not a product. It's not one service. It's not an add-on. It's all of Microsoft's premium content services, not only storing content, but how do we use AI and other systems to get the most out of it. Everything will go in the Syntex suite of products.
Can we call it an evolution of SharePoint?
I'm not sure we can go as far yet. I think it's making SharePoint better, but
better, yes.
SharePoint at its base, it's still there. It's still the solid foundation for everything to build on.
So Vlad, that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this last part of the Syntex in Action series, or at least the last part until Microsoft adds new content. If you missed the first two, you'll find them on YouTube, same playlist as this video. And If you enjoyed this video, you want to stay up to date with the latest news in Syntex, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. This way, hopefully we'll see Gökhan more and more on the channel. I keep inviting him, but he's so busy. So hopefully we'll get Gökhan more and more, put some peer pressure in the comments so we get him back. And again, thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed.
Cheers, bye-bye.